Should endurance athletes be doing strength training? This is a very common question that comes up and something that there's a lot of debate around. I'll answer it very quickly for you. They absolutely should. And let me tell you a story that explained why. So we had this lady come in the other day. We'll just call her Giselle. She runs marathons, half marathons, all that fun stuff. And she was coming in for some dumbbells. She seemed a little bit nervous or shy about it. So we started talking, telling me about her running, all that kind of stuff. I said, well, what made you want to get into the strength training? And she said that she's been running for about 20 years. And she's always been very anti-strength training because a lot of people have this idea that you're going to build too much muscle. You're going to get slow and it's going to all this kind of stuff, right? Completely false. Giselle finally had one of her coaches that convinced her. He said, just come train with me for like 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, she said she saw more progress in her running time than for the past decade of training when she was just focusing on running. Why does this happen? Well, a lot of times when you're running, the fatigue that you're feeling isn't necessarily because of things you can work on when you're running. You need to be working on something that actually can strengthen your muscles as well as your heart at the same time, because they both need to work symbiotically for you to get better at running. So there's a certain point where, yes, you do need to have a certain level of cardio that can really just come from running more and more and more. You have to put the miles in. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to get those edges, right? What's the differentiator between someone that's going to get the 2 hours and 10-minute time versus the 2 hours and 5-minute time? That could really come down to the strength training. We have to be sitting in front of the kettlebells because kettlebells are one of the best ways to do that. The kettlebell swing is one of the most fundamental exercises for any training program, but especially for our endurance athletes. Reason being that it's really most of a full body exercise. You're using your hips, you're using your glutes, hamstrings, you're also using a lot of the posterior chain, your lower back, you're using your core to engage it, and then of course you're getting a little bit of an arm workout just stabilizing the kettlebell, right? It really should not be an arm workout. You'll see a lot of people have popularized this swing where you're going all the way over your head and stuff. That's fine. There's a time and place for that, but that's not the kettlebell swing we're talking about. We're talking about the true standard kettlebell swing that if you look up, for example, like Strong First with Pavel, that is the kind of kettlebell swing we're talking about. It really should be focusing on the whole posterior chain. All that being said, there's a nice little story about someone who experienced why a lot of runners maybe shy away from strength training, which is they have this kind of preconceived notion about what it'll do to them. But when added in correctly, which she strength trains 2 to 3 times a week, it can do a lot of good. So I would definitely focus on the kettlebell swing. You can also do kettlebell clean. A clean and a swing are pretty much the same exercise. They just end in a different spot. The clean, you're going to be doing just a little bit more with your upper body, okay? It also can be nice just to change it up a little bit. Clean, you have to do one-handed. You can do a catch, but that's maybe not as functional. So now you're starting to get unilateral, which is always good to train. And then of course, anything you can do to strengthen the hip flexors and all that stuff is very important because a lot of runners have a lot of hip issues, hip impingement, all that kind of stuff. Not necessarily because they don't have the flexibility, but because they don't have the strength in the hip flexors. So being able to do some targeted exercises will make a world of difference.